Okay, finally, we didn't get to one last problem in the, not in all of the tutorials did we get to this final problem. So I want to give you a video coverage of it now, and that's problem 4.14, the impact of a price change on a normal good. Okay, but I want you to also be able to consider the impact of a price change on an inferior good, okay, or maybe a Giffen good, or, well, this is not super core, but a luxury good. Okay? And you also should be able to consider, perhaps easier, to consider the impact of an income change on the consumption of those types of goods that I just mentioned. Okay, suppose a good is normal in the economic sense. Consider the impact on the amount of good consumed when its price decreases. All right, price on, no, not price on the y-axis. We're going to look at two goods. Okay, so we're going to talk about the good X. This is the good we're going to be thinking about. Good Y, this is the other good. We only have two goods in this example, or when we graph it, we're only going to be depicting two goods, okay? Which is going to constrain what can happen, but this is what we've been dealing with. Okay, so the good is normal. What does that mean? If a good is normal, or normal within the range we're considering, that means when income expands, the person chooses to consume more of that good, as in this example. In fact, here both goods are normal. I'm consuming more X and more Y. Okay? So the income effect, or the income, the derivative with respect to income, or the change with respect to income, is going to be positive. If I have more income, or if I can move out along this sort of, if my budget constraints are shifted out, I consume more of it. But that's not exactly what the question is asking. The question is asking what happens when the price of the good decreases. Okay, so let's imagine the price of the good decreases. Well, what does that look like? Well, the price was the price was high, so we had this price initially, and then the good became, so I could buy up to I over px of this good if I only chose this good. But then the price decreased. The good became less expensive, so let's say the new budget constraint looks like this. So this is the new price, px prime, where px prime is less than px. This is how much I could consume if I only bought it, okay, at the new price. So we see the budget constraint swings this way. Okay, so the question is, what happens to the amount of this good X consumed? Okay, well, I could first remember my rules, and well, let me draw it. Okay. So let's try to draw the substitution effect and then the income effect. Yeah, you have to go in that direction. You can't go income and substitution. All right. So let's see, and then we got to make sure that what we're drawing agrees with this thing that we call normal, which we'll see in a sec. Okay. So this was my initial consumption of X. It gave me this utility. Consumption of Y. I'm not asking about Y, but okay. So this would be X 0, let's say. Okay, now what's the substitution effect? Can we remember what that is? Okay, the substitution effect is saying, okay, yes, price declined to here, fine. The price, oh sorry, not price decline, the budget, the price decline implying the budget set swung in, the budget constraint swung in. But what substitution is asking is, okay, suppose after that, we then, given the new prices, we gave people just enough income to obtain their initial level of utility, but given this new price ratio. Okay, we compensated for them for that, okay? So another way of saying that is, what is a point on the, or the point where, if we were to do that, we then first hit, the point is how much would I could start expanding this, increasing their income with the new prices, and the point that I would first hit this indifference curve would be the point where the new price ratio, where this is tangent to this indifference curve, so the new price ratio, right, so this is the old price ratio, so let's say this is P1 to 1. The new price ratio 0 to 1. I think I'm correct there, but anyways, that's the new price ratio, P0 to 1. Where the slope of the new price ratio is the same, where the new price ratio is the same as the indifference curve, okay? So X got more expensive, the slope got steeper. Where on this indifference curve, assuming we have diminishing marginal rate of substitution, where on this indifference curve do we find a point with a steeper slope? Well, it has to be a point, in other words, where do we find a point where I'm willing to give up more y to get x? Well, it has to be a point where I have less x and more y. So it has to be a point to the left of this, to the left of the original point on the indifference curve, okay? So this is the substitution effect takes me from here, is the change in x from x naught to x1, okay? In this case, this is the substitution effect. The price rose, the quantity consumed declined. Okay, cheat, that will always be the case. You can see that from the fact that we have diminishing marginal rate of substitution, at least if we're assuming diminishing marginal rate of substitution, which we usually do. Where will I find a point with a steeper slope? It'll always be to the left. So A says the income effect will be positive and the substitution effect will be positive. Okay, I would be a little more clear if I asked this on a midterm. In other words, we'll have a positive effect on. Okay, so I can rule out A because the effect of the rise in the price of X on consumption of X, or of a good, so substitution effect, Px rises, quantity chosen of X declines. So I can rule out A. Okay, so A is not correct, and I can rule out D because that also has the substitution effect will be positive. So now it's between B and C. Is the income effect negative or positive? Okay, well, that's going to depend on whether it's a normal good or an inferior good. But we just said, assume it's a normal good. Okay, what does the income effect look like here? Okay, well, so the person started out consuming at this point, right? If the price changed, if they had been compensated, they would then be consuming at this point. Okay, but where do they actually end up consuming? It's going to be something on the new budget line. Let's have a little room there. The new budget line. And unless it's a Giffen good, it will be a point where they're consuming less X than they started out consuming, okay? This was the initial X star at the price, or actually the initial consumption choice. Let's just call it point A. Here's the initial X. Okay, so it's going to be a point with less of X. Okay, but now what exactly do I need to do? So to go from here, to go from this budget constraint to this hypothetical budget constraint with substitution, I said find the point on this indifference curve that had this new price slope, now that X is more expensive, and then find that point and then draw this budget line, which would be the budget line again with the new prices if you were compensated just enough to be at the original level of utility you want. Okay, new prices, original level utility, but what happens, so then how do I move from this budget constraint to the actual new budget constraint with the new price, where this should intersect at I over the new price, Px prime, I guess we called it. Well, same slope, shift it in. What's that like? That's like a decrease in income. So we increase the income to compensate them. Now let's take it right back away, okay? If I decrease income for a normal good, do I consume more or less of that good? Increase income, consume more, decrease income, consume less. Okay, so this effect itself, so the substitution effect in this case went in this direction, i.e. negative, and the income effect, the effect of essentially having less purchasing power, that's also needs to decrease the amount of X consumed. So if I want to draw this correctly, I need the indifference curves to find a point on to be tangent to this budget line at a point not only to the left of the initial choice of the initial choice of x, but to the left of the compensated choice of x. So it might look something like this. So we see the initial choice of x was here. This hypothetical choice of x, we call it x substitution if you like, was here. Substitution effect. And then the new choice of x, let's call this x star, let's call this x star 0 and x star 1. The new choice of x is still less, okay? So the income effect is negative. As the price rose, the consumption of that good went down. So that's why the answer to this question is B and not C. Okay, but if you should ask yourself, well, what if I had said, suppose a good is inferior? Well, then in that case, the substitution effect again would decrease the consumption of this good, because it always does. As the price increases, you always, if you're compensated but you reach the same indifference enough to reach the same indifference curve with the new price ratio, that would always imply less consumption. But the income effect would then go in the opposite direction, because for an inferior good, if as I hold prices constant but decrease income, I actually consume more of that good. Inferior good, as income goes up, you consume less, so as income goes down, you consume more. So that would then have, if I had said that, then you'd see that I'd want to find a point that was to the right of excess, okay, along this budget constraint, which I might find that difficult to do in this case because I didn't save myself much room. But you could imagine an indifference curve actually could hit over there, perhaps. Okay. So in that case, we would then see a substitution effect in this direction, an income effect in this direction. In theory, the income effect could outweigh the substitution effect, and then we'd have actually a rise in the price of X meant more consumption of X, and we'd call it a Giffen good. But usually, the substitution effect will outweigh the income effect, even for an inferior good.